Thank you guys for coming out to hear us talk. The Godmother VR, right? What a weird nickname. Where did that come from? Yeah, I still have it. It started in Sundance in 2014. And I had brought to Sundance the very first virtual reality film in 2012. And in 2014, we suddenly had a lot more people there. And there was a reporter from Engadget hanging around. And all these people kept coming by and saying, well, she put the headset on me for the first time. She introduced me to virtual reality. And the Engadget guy was from like, man, you know. And if you know a little bit more about my backstory, in 2012, I was working at USC. And when I got this very first journalism piece about hunger into Sundance, we didn't have any goggles. All we had was this crazy thing called the Wide 5, which was $50,000 a pair. And the head of the lab was like, you're not taking that anywhere. And so there was a kid kicking around, and we showed up in 2012 with this duct-tape crazy, you know, it had 22 motion tracking cameras and these bright red LEDs to track where we're going. Anyway, that kid was crashed in my hotel room, helped me build these things, and 9 months later, he started a company called the Oculus Rift, and then sold that for $2 billion about 2.5 years later. So the Godmother comment came from the fact that I'd worked with Palmer, I'd introduced all these people to VR, and that feeling of like being called crazy, I was called crazy a lot. But now I've built a really interesting company, constantly pushing ahead. If you could roll our little trailer about the company, I think that people can see what we're up to. What if I could present you a story that you remember with your entire body and not just with your mind? So what'd you think? Oh, you're crying. With VR, virtual reality, I can put you on scene in the middle of the story. You get this whole body sensation.
There's a bunch of cops here. They're like standing around, something's going on.
Oh, right here. That's not cool.
On the other side of a fence, there's all these people just like kicking and beating.
We can have what I call this duality of presence, a real feeling as if you're in the middle of something that you normally see on TV news. So I started applying all these ideas to what I named immersive journalism. And we all know being there is the most important part of understanding almost anything that's happening. Along in a partnership with America's premier investigative documentary series, Frontline, who had incredible access on solitary confinement cells. What that is photogrammetry. And it's exact photographs of a cell. You are walking around the exact cell, the exact footprint. You are in the room. This works so well for putting people on scene at real stories. So then what? You got to put the people in there. How do you do that? I can now put you in the room with somebody who is videotaped in volume. You can literally walk around them in a volumetric way.
Emblematic is among the world's leading producers of virtual and augmented reality, with more than 10 years of experience. We create innovative, high-impact, immersive media, ranging from emotionally powerful stories for media companies, brands, and global culture, to OTT solutions for world-class partners in business-to-business virtual reality distribution. Let your audience experience your message in a deeply powerful and intimate experience. Don't just tell your story, live it.
So how impactful is this way of telling stories? So, you know, it's pretty exciting. If some of you follow Alejandro Gonzalez-Iñárritu, I pointed that out because he's at Cannes right now introducing his first VR piece. That's the director of Revenant. And he and Chivo, his partner and collaborator and camera guy, came in and saw Hunger. How many years ago? 5 years ago now. And it's been a long ride, but they're now releasing a piece all about migrants trying to cross the border that's getting rave reviews at Cannes. Also, the piece that we did with Planned Parenthood super interesting piece where we took real audio and we make you have to cross the line while young women, as if you're one of the young women that's being yelled at by protesters. So the audio is all real, and now you're being yelled at while you're trying to cross into a healthcare clinic. And that piece, which premiered at Sundance a year and a half ago, was taken into various markets and done a little bit of research was done on this, and seeing how individuals who maybe didn't, anti-abortion, who didn't believe, at this point the clinics were appropriate, et cetera. We just got our results back. We just announced them on Friday. And we found that, in fact, interestingly, people thought that the piece had been made by protesters. And because they didn't know what this thing really was, who had really made it. And secondly, they really did not like the way protesters treated young women. And they completely shifted their opinions about this matter. And they actually, even to the point where they were saying they would vote against candidates who wouldn't stop this kind of horrible, angry, vitriolic stuff that gets yelled at young women. I mean, you're a whore, stop sleeping with every guy at the club, these really nasty things. So the amazing thing is, like, we've been hearing this comment, oh, the empathy machine, is VR, really good for empathy? And we're just starting to see there is some truth to that. Like, I, even myself, feel very cautious as a journalist. Like, what can we do with this, VR? And how appropriate is it to use this journalistically? But what we're starting to see is that, in fact, it's its own medium. And, of course, because it can do this sort of extraordinary thing, which is take people whose views are entrenched and shift them toward a common goal, which is, okay, you might not be pro-abortion, but you certainly are anti having women being treated this way. That's pretty significant and pretty powerful, right? So, I kind of wanted you to be thinking about, what does that mean ethically? Does this mean that, we've got the most powerful propaganda tool on the planet? Probably. So what are we going to do about that? And I think it's up to all of the VR makers to think, how do we give our audiences critical thinking? In the same way that we've learned that fake news has been accepted, and I've seen some very interesting reports that the fake news is most believed by somewhat older audiences. It skews older because younger kids know how easy it is to make a video or make a website and put it up, right? So they understood the nature of, trying to figure out the transparency and the source of the information. How are we going to do that now with virtual reality? You've got the goggles on. You can't even click through to see whether something is true or not. So transparency is going to become a more and more important issue, right? And with mixed reality, we get a little bit more luck with that. And I think that this is going to be one of the things that is going to become more and more important for journalists to think about. There's other ethical issues. If there's a bombing, and we can capture it with photogrammetry, so we're capturing it photoreal, are we going to let people just step over the bodies in VR? I don't think so. So we're going to have some really interesting challenges ahead about how we use this medium that has become one of the most important tools now for us to be able to tell important stories and put you there. And I'm going to finish up with some slightly lighter things, to think about. VR is also used for a lot of fun. We do all kinds of fun and interesting things with this as well. And one of the great projects, which we showed very briefly, was our Wall Street Journal project, which lets you have a live feed of the stock market. It's both VR and AR, and it lets you see winners and losers instantaneously. So what does that mean? If we're looking at data like this, instead of having to go like this, we're understanding things more visually and more quickly. And this is something that I think is also going to change our world, that virtual reality is going to be used as a way to understand with our whole body instead of just with our mind. So I have to say that this has changed my life. Godmother or no Godmother, whatever that comment nickname is. I think this has been the most amazing opportunity for me to be able to tell stories, change people's minds, make them care more deeply, and understand their world in a visceral and significant way. So I really appreciate you coming out to hear me, and thank you so much for your time.